Young black man misses his interview to help. An old man turns out that man was the CEO. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We have noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It is quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let us keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us get back to the story. He did not know the old man on the sidewalk would change the rest of his life. But first, Malik Carter had to choose, save a stranger's life, or save his own future. The rain came down hard over downtown Chicago, sheets of water hammering the pavement. Malik ran, shoes slapping through puddles, clutching a thin plastic folder that held his only printed resume. He had 7 minutes to make it to Morrison and Associates Financial, the one company that might finally take a chance on him. The building was 4 blocks away, but the storm made each step feel heavier, slower, crueler. This job was not just another chance. It was his family's survival, his mother's insulin, his sister's tuition, the rent they were already late on. Everything depended on today. Then he saw it. An elderly white man collapsed near the curb, one hand gripping a briefcase that had burst open, papers scattered like frightened birds. Cars splashed by without stopping. The man's gray hair clung to his forehead, his lips parted, gasping for air. People stared, then looked away. Everyone had somewhere else to be. Malik froze for a split second. The glass tower of Morrison and Associates gleamed ahead through the rain. He checked his phone 7 minutes left. Then he heard it. A weak voice breaking through the storm. Please, help. Malik's father used to say, character is what you do when nobody is watching. But right now, everyone was watching and nobody was doing a thing. He dropped his folder and ran. Kneeling beside the man, Malik shielded him from the rain with his own jacket. Sir, can you hear me? The man's face had gone pale, eyes unfocused, breathing short and sharp. Malik's voice stayed calm, the same tone he had used when his mother had a heart episode last year. Stay with me, sir. I am calling for help. Water poured off the edge of Malik's sleeve as he dialed 911. The dispatcher's voice crackled through the static. Emergency units are delayed due to flooding. Estimated arrival 15 to 20 minutes. Too long. Malik looked around. A security guard watched from the lobby doors but did not step outside. Ambulance is coming, the guard shouted, retreating back into the dry warmth. Malik's breath came in cold clouds. You are not alone, he said softly, pressing the old man's trembling hand. We are going to get through this. He lifted the man's head slightly, easing him against the side of the building. Rainwater pooled around Malik's knees, soaking through his slacks. He did not care. The man tried to speak. Your jacket, your interview. Do not worry about that, Malik said. Right now you are all that matters. He gathered the drenched papers from the street, slipping them back into the ruined briefcase. He did not notice the golden letters embossed on one of the business cards. Harold Morrison, chairman and CEO. All Malik knew was that a human being was in pain. His phone buzzed in his pocket, 3 missed calls from Morrison and Associates. The interview had started. His stomach clenched, but he stayed where he was, kneeling in the rain beside a man he had never met. The city roared around them, sirens, car horns, thunder rolling across the skyline, but inside that moment, there was silence. Only the sound of rain hitting asphalt and the slow, fragile rhythm of a stranger's breathing. And Malik Carter did not move, because some opportunities you chase with ambition, and others you earn through compassion. The alarm clock screamed at 5:30 in the morning, echoing through Malik Carter's 1-bedroom apartment on Chicago's South Side. The sound bounced off paint-peeled walls and the thin ceiling that leaked when it rained too long. Malik reached out from the couch where he had fallen asleep, silencing the noise with one tired hand. He could not afford to snooze. Today was the day. He sat up slowly, rubbing sleep from his eyes, and glanced at the suit hanging on the back of a chair. It was not new, not even his. Mr. Jenkins, the retired teacher from upstairs, had lent it to him. Make it count, the old man had said. Malik had spent half the night ironing it on the kitchen table, using a towel as a makeshift board. Every crease mattered. Every detail meant a chance. In the tiny kitchen, his mother was already awake, sitting by the window with her glucose meter. She looked up when he entered. Morning, baby. Her voice was gentle, but her hands shook slightly as she tested her blood sugar. Malik tried to smile. Morning, Mama. How are you feeling today? Better, she said, though they both knew it was a lie. The medicine was expensive, and the bottle was almost empty. Malik walked over and kissed her forehead. I will pick up your prescription tomorrow, he promised. She smiled faintly. You just focus on that interview, Malik. They are going to see what you are made of. He nodded but said nothing. Inside, his stomach twisted. He had prepared for this day for weeks, researching Morrison and Associates Financial, memorizing facts, rehearsing answers. Still, a voice in his head whispered, They will see the suit, the skin, the South Side address, and decide before you even speak. He pushed the thought away. He could not afford doubt. He brewed coffee in a cracked mug and sat for a moment in silence, looking at the framed photograph of his father on the wall. The man wore a military uniform, standing tall and proud. Beneath it, his handwriting from an old birthday card, Character is what you do when nobody is watching. Malik whispered the words out loud. I will make you proud today, Dad. His phone buzzed with a text from his younger sister, Layla. You got this, big bro. Mom and I are praying for you. The message made his chest tighten. Layla was the first in the family to go to college, and every month he sent what little money he could to help her with books and rent. If this job worked out, she would never have to worry again. He counted bus fare from a mason jar labeled Interview Fund. 2 $1 bills, 2 quarters. Exactly enough. He slipped the coins into his pocket and stood before the cracked mirror by the door. The reflection staring back looked older than 28 tired eyes, steady jaw, quiet determination. The sky outside was still dark when he stepped onto the street. The wind carried a hint of rain. Malik pulled his coat tighter, walking past shuttered stores and graffiti-stained walls. Chicago was waking up slowly, the smell of diesel and wet pavement filling the air. At the bus stop, he joined a small crowd of workers, construction men, janitors, a woman in scrubs. They nodded to each other like soldiers at roll call, strangers bound by the same battle, survival. The bus arrived late, hissing as it braked. Malik found a seat near the back, clutching his folder to his chest. The city rolled by through fogged windows, streetlights reflected on puddles, billboards promising better futures and financial freedom. He wondered what that felt like. As the bus climbed toward downtown, the skyline came into view, silver towers cutting through low clouds. Morrison and Associates Financial stood among them, 37 floors of glass and steel. He had walked past it many times, dreaming of what it looked like inside. Today he would find out. He rehearsed his introduction silently. Good morning. My name is Malik Carter, and I am excited about the opportunity to join your team. He smiled faintly, practicing confidence even when none of it felt real. When the bus turned a corner, Malik caught his own reflection in the window. Behind it, he saw the neighborhoods fading away, the corner store, the community center, the people who had believed in him. Mrs. Turner from across the hall had slipped him a $5 bill yesterday. For luck, she had said. He had promised to pay her back tenfold someday. The clouds thickened overhead, darker now, heavy with rain. The forecast had warned of a storm, but Malik had no umbrella. He whispered to himself, Please hold off until after the interview. Oh. The bus pulled to a stop 2 blocks from the towering building that could change his life. Malik stepped off, feet splashing into shallow puddles. The air smelled like ozone and coming thunder. He straightened his borrowed tie, smoothed his sleeves, and took a deep breath. In that moment, he did not feel like the broke kid from Southside Chicago. He felt ready. He started walking toward Morrison and Associates, head high, eyes steady. Rain began to fall soft at first, then harder, turning the pavement slick. Malik kept moving, one hand guarding his folder from the storm. He did not know that just a few blocks ahead, a stranger would fall, a briefcase would burst open, and every plan he had ever made would be rewritten by one simple choice. Because sometimes the path to destiny is not a straight line. Sometimes it begins with rain. Rain pounded the streets of downtown Chicago like 1,000 tiny drums. Malik Carter pulled his coat tighter around his shoulders as he ran, dodging umbrellas and stepping over deep puddles that reflected the flashing lights of passing cars. The clock on his phone read 9:52 in the morning. His interview at Morrison and Associates Financial started at 10. He had 8 minutes. 8 minutes that could change everything. The storm was relentless now. Wind funneled between the tall glass buildings, turning every corner into a tunnel of rain. Malik's shoes were soaked through, the thin leather squishing with each step. He clutched his plastic folder close to his chest, trying to keep his resume dry. His lungs burned from running, but he kept pushing forward. Then, through the blur of rain, he saw movement on the sidewalk ahead. An elderly white man was standing near the curb, struggling with a heavy leather briefcase. The man's suit looked expensive, his shoes polished, but he was fighting a losing battle against the storm. Without warning, a violent gust of wind ripped the briefcase from his hands. The metal latches burst open, sending a flurry of papers spinning into the air like white birds. The man shouted and lunged for them, but his shoes slipped on the slick pavement. He fell hard onto his side, the briefcase crashing beside him. Malik stopped running. For a moment he just stood there, rain pelting his face, heart racing. The Morrison and Associates building loomed only a few blocks away, its mirrored windows glowing against the dark sky. He could make it if he kept going. But the man on the ground was struggling to breathe, one hand clutching his chest, the other reaching weakly for the scattered pages. People passed by quickly, eyes down, umbrellas tilted forward. One man in a tailored coat stepped around the scene without slowing. A woman on her phone crossed the street to avoid getting splashed. No one stopped. Malik's phone buzzed in his pocket. A call from a number he recognized: Morrison and Associates, Human Resources. He hesitated, staring at the screen as rainwater ran down his wrist. Then he looked back at the old man. The sound of his father's voice echoed in his mind. Character is what you do when nobody is watching. He silenced the phone and ran toward the fallen man. "Sir, can you hear me?" Malik knelt beside him, his knees hitting the wet concrete. The man's breathing was shallow, erratic. His skin had turned a pale gray. Malik's own pulse raced, but his voice stayed calm. "Stay with me, sir. I'm going to help you." The man's lips trembled. "My chest hurts. Cannot breathe." Malik recognized the signs immediately. He had seen this before when his mother's blood sugar had crashed. He reached for his phone again and dialed 911. "This is an emergency," he said, shouting over the roar of the storm. "An elderly man, possible heart attack, corner of LaSalle and Madison. He is conscious but struggling to breathe." The dispatcher replied through static. "Emergency units are delayed due to flooding. Estimated arrival time 15 to 20 minutes. Please hurry," Malik urged. He ended the call and looked down at the man. The rainwater mixed with sweat on the man's forehead. "You are going to be all right," Malik said softly. He took off his coat and draped it over the man's shoulders, shielding him from the cold downpour. From the corner of his eye, Malik saw the lobby of a nearby office building. A security guard stood there, watching the scene through the glass doors. Malik waved frantically. "Hey, I need help out here." The guard opened the door a few inches, shouted, "Ambulance is probably already coming," and then stepped back inside, closing the door against the rain. Malik stared in disbelief. For a moment, anger surged through him, but he pushed it down. He had no time for anger. The man on the ground needed him. "Talk to me, sir," Malik said. "Do you have family nearby? Someone I can call?" The man's eyes flickered open. "Wife! Margaret! 2 daughters," he gasped. "Good," Malik said, nodding, keeping him focused. "Tell me about them. Keep talking." The man's breathing steadied slightly. 42 years married. Both daughters are doctors. Sounds like a family that loves you very much," Malik said. He spoke slowly, keeping the man engaged, keeping his mind away from panic. Rain ran down Malik's face, dripping from his chin, soaking through his shirt. He could feel his own body trembling from the cold, but he ignored it. Cars splashed by, sending waves of dirty water over the sidewalk. A taxi slowed for a second, then accelerated when the driver saw the man lying there. Malik wanted to shout, but he stayed calm. "You are doing great, sir," he said. "Stay with me. Help is coming." He looked at the papers scattered around them, some half dissolved by rain. Without thinking, he began gathering them up, stuffing them back into the open briefcase. The waterlogged pages stuck to his hands: financial reports, charts, company letterhead that read Morrison and Associates Financial. Malik frowned for half a second, confused, then turned back to the man. There was no time to think about coincidences. The man looked at him through heavy, rain-filled eyes. "Why? Are you helping me?" Malik met his gaze. "Because you need help." "But your interview," the man whispered. Malik managed a faint smile. "There will be other interviews. There will not be another you." The man tried to laugh, but the sound turned into a cough. Malik steadied him again. Easy. Just breathe with me. Minutes passed like hours. Malik's phone showed 10 o'clock. The interview had already started. He had missed his chance. Still, he stayed on the sidewalk, shielding a stranger from the storm. Then, at last, the sound of sirens cut through the rain. Red and blue lights flashed against the buildings as paramedics rushed over with equipment. One of them knelt beside Malik. "You did good, sir," she said. "You probably kept him alive." Malik stepped back as they worked, chest heaving, hands trembling from exhaustion. As they lifted the man onto the stretcher, the older man reached out weakly and grabbed Malik's wrist. His grip was surprisingly strong. "Come with me," he whispered. Malik hesitated, glancing at the soaked remains of his folder on the ground. His resume was ruined, his suit was destroyed, his future uncertain. But he nodded anyway. "All right, sir. I am not going anywhere." The paramedics loaded them into the ambulance. Malik sat beside the man, watching the rain streak across the windows as the city lights blurred outside. He had no idea that the stranger he had just saved was Harold Morrison, the CEO of the very company that was about to change his life forever. And neither of them knew that this moment in the storm was the beginning of something much bigger than a missed interview. It was the beginning of a movement built on compassion, character, and quiet courage. The sirens faded into the rhythm of the rain as the ambulance pulled away from the curb. Malik Carter sat inside, his clothes soaked through, the smell of disinfectant mixing with the damp air. The paramedics moved with steady precision, checking blood pressure, attaching sensors, and speaking in calm, professional voices. The old man, Harold Morrison, though Malik still did not know his name, was breathing easier now. Oxygen mask pressed gently over his face. One of the paramedics looked at Malik. "You did well. Most people would have walked past. You probably saved his life." Malik nodded silently, staring at his trembling hands. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind a heavy ache in his arms and a hollow pit in his stomach. The folder containing his resume sat in a wet heap at his feet, ink bleeding into unreadable swirls. His one chance at a better future had dissolved into pulp, but he could not bring himself to regret it. Harold's eyes fluttered open. He looked at Malik through the clear plastic of the oxygen mask. "You stayed," he whispered. "Of course I did," Malik said. "You needed help." The man studied him for a moment, his eyes searching. Then he nodded slightly before drifting back into uneasy sleep. The ambulance arrived at Chicago General Hospital, pulling under the canopy to escape the rain. The paramedics rushed Harold through the sliding doors while Malik followed a few steps behind. His shoes squelched with every movement, leaving small puddles on the white tile floor. At the reception desk, a nurse looked him over and raised an eyebrow. "Sir, are you family?" "No, ma'am," Malik said softly. "I found him outside on LaSalle Street. He collapsed." "Wait here," she said. "We will update you once we know his condition." Malik sank into one of the hard plastic chairs in the waiting area. His body shivered from the cold, his fingers numb. He could feel the weight of exhaustion pressing on his shoulders, but deeper than that was a strange sense of peace. He had done the right thing. Minutes stretched into an hour. Nurses moved quickly down the halls, the hospital intercom buzzing with codes and names. Malik sat still, staring at the floor, lost in thought. His phone was dead. His wet suit clung to his skin, the air conditioning turning the moisture icy. Yet he could not bring himself to leave. Eventually, a doctor in blue scrubs approached. "Are you the one who helped Mr. Morrison?" he asked. "Yes, sir," Malik replied, rising to his feet. "How is he?" "He is stable," the doctor said, a hint of gratitude in his voice. "Severe panic attack, but you kept him calm long enough for us to treat him. That made all the difference." Relief washed through Malik, warm and heavy. "I am glad he is all right," he said quietly. The doctor smiled. "You should get dry clothes and rest, son. Not everyone would have done what you did." Malik nodded, thanking him before sitting again. His mind drifted. He thought of his mother at home, probably watching the rain from their apartment window, waiting for a text that would never come because his phone had died. He imagined her worrying, wondering if he had gotten the job. The thought tightened his chest, but he pushed it aside. After another half hour, a nurse approached. "Mr. Morrison is awake and asking for you," she said. Malik blinked. "For me?" She nodded. "He says you are his guardian angel." The words made Malik blush with embarrassment. "All right," he said, standing up slowly. "Where is he?" She led him down a quiet hallway into a private room with large windows overlooking the storm. Harold lay propped up in bed, his face pale but calm. The oxygen mask was gone, replaced by thin nasal tubing. He looked different now, composed, dignified, but still fragile. When Malik entered, Harold's eyes lit up. "There he is," he said, voice rough but warm. "The young man who refused to leave me in the rain." Malik smiled shyly. "I'm just glad you are feeling better, sir." "Better because of you," Harold replied. He studied Malik for a moment, noticing the ruined suit, the damp hair, the tired eyes. "You missed something important today, did you not?" Malik hesitated. "A job interview," he admitted. "It was supposed to start about the same time you fell." Harold's gaze softened. "And yet you stopped." "Yes, sir," Malik said simply. "I could not walk past." The older man exhaled slowly, the corners of his mouth curling into a faint smile. "You remind me of someone I used to know. He believed success means nothing if it costs your soul." Malik glanced down, unsure how to respond. "It was just the right thing to do." Harold chuckled lightly. "You say that as if it is common. It is not." He reached for the glass of water on his bedside table, then paused. "What is your name, son?" "Malik Carter." "Malik," Harold repeated thoughtfully. "Strong name. Tell me, what kind of work were you hoping to do?" "Anything honest," Malik replied. "But I studied business administration. I wanted to help people build something lasting." Harold nodded, his expression unreadable. "You may have more in common with me than you think." Before Malik could ask what he meant, a nurse entered to adjust the monitors. Harold held up a hand. "Thank you, nurse. Could you give us a few minutes?" She nodded and stepped outside. When the room was quiet again, Harold turned back to Malik. "I cannot offer you money," he said slowly. "Not yet, but I can offer gratitude. You gave me time I might not have had." "You do not owe me anything," Malik said gently. "I just did what anyone should do." Harold smiled faintly. If only that were true. For a long moment, neither spoke. The rain tapped softly against the window, steady and rhythmic. Then Harold said, "I would like to see you again, Malik. After I am discharged, there is something I need to discuss with you." Malik hesitated. "Of course, sir. Whatever you need." Harold nodded, his gaze unwavering. "Good. I believe fate has a peculiar way of arranging meetings. Sometimes it tests us before it rewards us." Malik did not fully understand, but he agreed. He gathered his wet coat from the chair and gave a small nod. "Take care of yourself, Mr. Morrison." I will," Harold said, smiling faintly. "And Malik, thank you." When Malik stepped back into the hallway, the storm had finally begun to ease. The rain had slowed to a soft drizzle, the sky lightening beyond the hospital windows. He felt drained but calm, unaware that the man he had just left was not only his patient, but also the CEO of the company whose door he had been running toward that morning. Outside, the streets glistened under the fading rain, and Malik Carter walked into the gray afternoon, his future unknowingly already rewritten. 2 days passed before the rain finally gave way to sunlight. The city looked washed clean, but Malik Carter felt anything but refreshed. His ruined suit hung by the window, still carrying the faint smell of hospital antiseptic and damp air. Each time he saw it, a quiet ache settled in his chest, a reminder of the interview that had slipped away and the man whose life he had stumbled into saving. He sat at the kitchen table that morning, spreading the local newspaper beside his coffee. The headlines blurred together: market trends, sports scores, another political scandal. Then his eyes froze on a smaller section near the bottom of the page. Local business leader recovering after medical emergency downtown. The short article described how Harold Morrison, the CEO of Morrison and Associates Financial, had collapsed on LaSalle Street during a storm and was rescued by an unnamed bystander who left before reporters could reach him. Malik's pulse quickened as he read. There was a photo of the man, gray hair neatly combed, familiar blue eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Malik leaned back in his chair, heart pounding. "Mr. Morrison," he whispered. He felt a wave of shock and disbelief. The man he had helped was not just anyone. He was the head of the very company where Malik had missed his interview. For a moment, Malik laughed softly to himself, a small, breathless sound that carried both irony and wonder. His mother walked in, her robe tied loosely around her waist. "What is funny?" He handed her the newspaper. "Remember the man I told you about? The one from the storm? Look at this." She put on her reading glasses, scanning the lines. "Lord have mercy," she said quietly. "You saved a CEO." Malik shrugged, trying to play it off. But she saw the pride flicker behind his modest smile. "I just did what was right," he said. She touched his hand. "And sometimes doing right brings blessings you do not expect." That afternoon, Malik went back to his part-time job at the community center, fixing computers for neighborhood kids. It was quiet work, but it paid little. Every keystroke reminded him of what he had lost. Yet when he thought of Mr. Morrison lying in that hospital bed, thanking him, he felt peace instead of regret. As he packed up for the day, his phone buzzed. A number he did not recognize flashed on the screen. "Hello?" he answered. "Is this Mr. Carter?" The voice was professional, female, and calm. "Yes, ma'am. This is Jessica Grant, executive assistant to Mr. Harold Morrison. He asked that I reach out to you personally. He would like to see you tomorrow morning at our main office if you are available." Malik blinked, caught off guard. "At Morrison and Associates?" "Yes, sir. 10 o'clock sharp. He said it is important." For a moment, Malik could not speak. He managed to say, "I will be there." When he hung up, his hands trembled. His mind raced through possibilities. Gratitude, perhaps, or some formal thank you gesture. Still, a small voice inside whispered, "This is not over. The story is still unfolding." The next morning, Malik dressed carefully. He borrowed another suit from Mr. Jenkins upstairs, this one dark gray with slightly frayed cuffs. He polished his shoes until they shone and took the early bus downtown. The sky was clear, the air cool. The storm had passed, but he still felt its echo inside him like thunder waiting to roll again. As he stepped off the bus, the towering glass facade of Morrison and Associates rose ahead, gleaming in the morning light. Malik paused on the sidewalk, staring up at it. Just 2 days earlier, he had stood in this same spot, drenched and desperate. Now he was walking through those doors by invitation. Inside, the lobby buzzed with quiet, luxury-polished marble floors, gold accents, the hum of soft jazz from hidden speakers. Malik approached the front desk, where a receptionist in a navy blazer looked up. "Good morning, sir. Do you have an appointment?" "Yes," he said, "with Mr. Morrison." Her tone changed instantly. "Of course, Mr. Carter. He is expecting you. Please take the elevator to the top floor." The elevator ride felt endless. Malik watched his reflection in the mirror, polished steel walls, his heart pounding louder with each passing floor. When the doors opened, a tall woman with a clipboard greeted him. "Mr. Carter, I am Jessica. Please, follow me." She led him through a corridor lined with framed photographs, images of charity galas, construction projects, and business milestones. Malik recognized Mr. Morrison in several of them, always smiling, always shaking hands. At the end of the hallway stood a pair of double-glass doors. Jessica opened them quietly. Inside, sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. Harold Morrison sat behind a large oak desk, reading a file. He looked stronger now, color back in his cheeks. When he saw Malik, he stood and smiled. "Mr. Carter," he said warmly, "you made it." "Yes, sir," Malik said, his voice steady. "Thank you for having me." "Please sit," Harold said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "I owe you more than a hospital thank you. You gave me my life back." Malik shook his head. "I only did what anyone should do." Harold leaned forward, eyes sharp but kind. "That is exactly why I wanted to see you. You did what anyone should do, but what almost no one does. You stopped when everyone else walked past. That tells me more about you than any resume could." Malik blinked, unsure what to say. Harold smiled slightly. "You were on your way here that morning, were you not? To interview for our management training program?" Malik nodded slowly. "Yes, sir." "Well," Harold said, leaning back, "you never made it to that interview, but as far as I am concerned, you already passed it." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Malik felt his throat tighten. "Sir, Harold raised a hand. "No need to speak. I have already spoken with Human Resources. If you are still interested, there is a position waiting for you." Malik's breath caught. "You mean?" "I mean you start Monday," Harold said, smiling. "But not as a trainee. I have a different role in mind for someone who understands what leadership really means." Malik sat back, stunned. The storm, the rain, the choice it had all led here. Outside the window, the sun broke fully through the clouds, reflecting across the skyline. Harold glanced toward it, and then back at Malik. "You see, Mr. Carter," he said softly. Sometimes destiny hides inside small moments of decency. You proved that to me. Malik's voice was quiet but certain. Thank you, sir. I will not let you down. I know you will not, Harold said. Now, let us talk about the future. And for the first time in years, Malik felt the ground beneath his feet shift, not with fear, but with possibility. Malik Carter could still feel the echo of Harold Morrison's words as he rode the elevator down from the top floor of Morrison and Associates. You already passed the interview. The phrase replayed in his mind like a melody he did not quite believe was real. He stepped into the lobby, where the polished marble reflected his uncertain smile. For a long moment, he simply stood there, letting the weight of it sink in. Outside, the city moved at its usual pace, impatient, loud, unstoppable. But for Malik, time had slowed. Just 2 mornings earlier, he had been standing on this very street, soaked to the bone, dismissed by strangers, watching his future wash away with the rain. Now he carried a folder that held an offer letter with the Morrison and Associates seal. He stopped at the glass doors before stepping out. In the reflection, he saw the man he used to be tired, desperate, invisible, and the man he was becoming steady, grounded, seen. He whispered to himself, "Do not forget who you were when nobody was watching." That night, Malik took the long bus ride home. The city lights blurred past like streaks of gold and blue. He sat by the window, staring at the rain-spattered glass, remembering the sound of Harold's voice. Sometimes destiny hides inside small moments of decency. When he reached his stop, the familiar streets of Southside Chicago greeted him with the scent of fried food and exhaust fumes. He climbed the worn steps to his apartment, the same ones that creaked under his weight every day. But tonight, they sounded different, lighter somehow, as if carrying hope. Inside, his mother was sitting on the couch, reading her Bible. She looked up when he entered, her eyes curious. "So, how did it go?" Malik handed her the letter. "I start Monday." For a moment, she just stared at him, reading the words, her lips parting in disbelief. Then she stood, tears forming in her eyes. "You did it, baby." Malik smiled and hugged her tightly. "We did it." She held his face in her hands. "Do you see now? Doing right never costs you anything that matters." The weekend passed quietly. Malik pressed his suit again, cleaned his shoes, and reread the company handbook that Harold's assistant had emailed him. He wanted to be ready not just for the work, but for the responsibility. On Monday morning, he arrived early. The building gleamed under the sunlight, its glass surface reflecting the city's skyline. Inside, employees moved briskly through the halls, their heels clicking against marble floors. Some nodded politely as Malik passed, though a few looked at him curiously, as if trying to place his face. Jessica, the executive assistant, greeted him at the reception area. "Good morning, Mr. Carter. Mr. Morrison is in a meeting, but he wanted me to take you to your new office." My office?" Malik repeated, surprised. She smiled. "Yes, right this way." She led him through a corridor overlooking the main trading floor. Behind glass walls, teams of analysts worked in near silence, their screens glowing with numbers and graphs. The energy was sharp, focused, electric. Malik followed, feeling the weight of it all pressing around him. At the end of the hallway, Jessica stopped before a corner suite. The doorplate read, "Assistant to the Chairman, Malik Carter." He froze. "This has to be a mistake," he said quietly. "No mistake," she replied. Mr. Morrison insisted. Inside, the office was modest but elegant mahogany desk, leather chair, a view of the river cutting through the city. On the desk lay a small black notebook with a handwritten note on top. Malik picked it up and read, "Leadership is not about power, it is about presence. Welcome aboard, HM." He stared at the words for a long time. Leadership had always felt like something distant, reserved for people who looked different, spoke differently, came from somewhere else. Now it was sitting in front of him, tangible and real. The intercom on his desk buzzed. Jessica's voice came through. "Mr. Morrison would like to see you in the boardroom." Malik straightened his tie and made his way down the hall. When he entered, the room was filled with department heads, men and women in tailored suits, each holding a copy of a new initiative proposal. At the far end of the table, Harold Morrison stood, leaning on his cane. He gestured for Malik to come closer. "Ladies and gentlemen," Harold began, "this is Mr. Malik Carter. Some of you may have heard about the incident last week. He is the man who stopped in the rain when everyone else kept walking. The room went silent. Malik felt dozens of eyes turned toward him, curious, appraising, some skeptical. Harold continued. He reminded me why this company exists, not to chase numbers, but to build integrity. Today, we are launching a new program called the Character Initiative. It will focus on mentorship, community investment, and leadership development, starting right here, under Mr. Carter's coordination. Murmurs rippled through the room. One executive frowned slightly. With respect, sir, he just started. Is he qualified to lead such an initiative? Harold smiled. He is more qualified than most of us. He has already demonstrated the kind of judgment no degree can teach. Malik's throat tightened. He looked around the table, then met Harold's gaze. Thank you, sir. I will give it everything I have. I know you will, Harold said firmly. You see, gentlemen and ladies, our future depends not on who can climb the fastest, but on who remembers to stop when others fall. The words landed heavy in the air. For the first time, Malik understood that his act of compassion had become something larger than himself, a message, a mirror held up to an entire room of power. After the meeting, Harold placed a hand on Malik's shoulder. Come by my office later, he said quietly. There is more to discuss. Yes, sir. As the executives filed out, Malik lingered by the window, looking down at the city below. The streets shimmered in the afternoon light. Somewhere out there, people were still hurrying, still making choices between kindness and convenience. He thought of the storm, of the old man lying helpless in the rain, and how easily he could have walked away. But he had not. Now, standing inside a skyscraper that once seemed unreachable, Malik realized the truth. Doing the right thing had not cost him his future. It had become his future. And deep down, he knew the real work was only beginning. The afternoon sun slanted through the tall windows of the boardroom, washing the polished table in soft gold. The meeting had ended, but Malik Carter still stood near the window, trying to absorb what had just happened. He had walked into this building a stranger and walked out of that room with a title that did not even seem real, coordinator of the Character Initiative. He looked down at the city below. Cars moved like threads of light, weaving through streets that had once felt impossible to climb out of. It was strange how quickly life could change. 1 week, you were praying for a chance. The next, you were holding the proof that compassion could rewrite destiny. The door opened behind him. Jessica stepped inside carrying a folder. Mr. Morrison wanted you to have these, she said. It is background material for the new initiative company outreach programs, previous community grants, potential partners. Malik nodded and took the folder. Thank you, Jessica. She hesitated before speaking again. Everyone is talking about you. What you did, people do not see that kind of thing often, especially around here. I did not do it for attention, Malik said quietly. I know, she replied. That is why it matters. When she left, Malik sat at the long table, flipping through the documents. Photos of youth programs, small business grants, housing projects, all good work. But the numbers were small compared to what the company could truly do. He thought of the neighborhoods like his own Southside families who needed opportunity, not charity. A knock sounded at the door. Harold Morrison walked in, cane tapping softly against the floor. He looked healthier than he had at the hospital, though a faint tiredness still lingered behind his eyes. Settling in, Mr. Carter? He asked. Yes, sir, Malik replied. I was just reviewing the community files. Good, Harold said. I built this company to make money, yes. But I never wanted profit to be the only measure of success. Somewhere along the way, that message got lost. He paused, studying Malik. You reminded me what it means to lead. And Malik felt a mix of gratitude and humility. Thank you, sir. I am honored. But I am not sure I know how to build something this big. Harold smiled slightly. You will learn. Leadership is not a formula. It is a reflection of character. That is why I am giving you freedom to shape this initiative. I want it to reach the people who never get a second glance. I know exactly who those people are, Malik said softly. I thought you might. Harold tapped his cane once against the floor. There is another reason I wanted to see you. I am retiring soon. The board does not know yet. My time is limited, but I want to leave this company in the hands of those who understand its heart. Malik blinked. You mean? I want you close, Harold interrupted gently. Learn everything you can. Ask questions. Watch how people move in these halls. The ones who chase power will always reveal themselves first. The ones who serve quietly, those are the ones worth leading. Malik nodded slowly, the gravity of the moment settling in. I will not waste the opportunity, Harold smiled. I know you will not. They spoke for nearly an hour about logistics, budgets, and timelines. But beneath every practical detail was an unspoken truth. This was not just a job. It was a passing of values from one generation to another. When Malik left Harold's office, the sky outside was deepening toward evening. The glow of the city reflected off the glass towers like liquid gold. As he walked through the lobby, employees whispered in small clusters. Some smiled at him. Others eyed him with thinly veiled curiosity. He heard a voice say, "That is the guy who saved the boss." Another replied, "Let us see how long he lasts." Malik kept walking. He had grown up around doubt. It did not scare him anymore. Outside, the air carried the scent of rain still trapped in the pavement. He decided to walk instead of taking the bus. The city lights flickered to life as he moved past shop windows and food carts, his reflection following beside him in the glass. Every step reminded him that he did not belong to luck. He belonged to choices. At a crosswalk, he saw a young man in a hoodie sitting on the curb, flipping through a notebook filled with sketches. Malik stopped. "You draw?" he asked. The kid looked up, startled. Yeah. Just stuff for school." Mind if I see?" The boy hesitated, then handed over the book. The drawings were raw but powerful portraits of people on buses, workers in alleys, mothers holding kids in laundromats. Malik nodded slowly. "You have real talent. Ever thought about turning this into something bigger?" The boy shrugged. "No one takes art serious around here." Malik smiled. "They will. Keep going." He handed back the sketchbook and crossed the street. As he walked away, he realized that moments like that, the quiet ones, unseen and uncelebrated, were the foundation of what he wanted the character initiative to become. Not charity, not pity, empowerment. When Malik reached his apartment, the lights were off except for the soft glow from his mother's room. He set his briefcase down and stood by the window. The city stretched before him, vast and restless, but somehow less distant than before. He thought of Harold's words, "Leadership is a reflection of character." For years, Malik had believed leadership belonged to people who already had power. But now he understood something deeper. True leadership begins the moment you decide to act, even when no one is watching. He turned off the lamp and sat in the quiet, feeling the hum of the city beneath the floor. The rain had started again, light but steady, tapping against the window like a memory returning. And somewhere in the tall building downtown, Harold Morrison was doing the same, watching the rain, thinking about the young man who had changed the course of his company and perhaps reminded him what legacy truly meant. Neither of them spoke that night, but both understood it. The storm that had nearly taken a life had given birth to something greater, a partnership built not on power, but on purpose. And it was only the beginning. Morning sunlight spilled through the blinds of Malik Carter's small apartment, painting stripes across the floor. The city was already awake, car horns, voices, the hum of life pulsing through the streets below. Malik sipped his coffee slowly, watching steam rise from the cup. Monday had arrived again, but this one felt different. It was his first full week as part of Morrison and Associates. He glanced at the neatly pressed gray suit hanging by the door. It was the same one he had worn to meet Harold Morrison, but today it seemed to fit better. Confidence had a way of changing how fabric felt on your shoulders. His mother called from the kitchen. "You are leaving early again?" "Yes, ma'am," Malik said. "We are launching the first phase of the character initiative today. Mr. Morrison wants it to start strong." She smiled. "Make him proud, but more important, make yourself proud." "I will," he promised. On the way downtown, the bus windows glowed with the reflection of the morning Sunday. Malik watched as neighborhoods shifted from brick houses to glass towers. The same streets that once felt endless now looked like pathways. When he reached the building, Jessica was waiting in the lobby with a stack of folders. "Good morning, Mr. Carter," she said, smiling. "Ready for day one of the initiative?" "As ready as I will ever be," Malik replied. They spent the morning in a small conference room where a handful of employees gathered diverse faces, each carrying a different story. Some looked eager, others uncertain. Malik introduced himself, explaining what the character initiative would stand for: mentorship, opportunity, and action rooted in integrity. He spoke simply. "This is not about charity. It is about respect. Every person we help must see themselves as capable, not broken." When he finished, there was a long silence. Then someone at the table nodded. Another smiled. The energy shifted. It was working. Later that afternoon, Harold Morrison joined them. He walked slowly with his cane but carried the same calm strength that filled every room he entered. He listened as Malik outlined pilot programs for job training and youth development. When Malik finished, Harold said quietly, "This is the kind of leadership I hope to see. Character is not a department, it is a culture. Let us build it that way." Applause followed, light but sincere. Malik caught Harold's eye and saw pride there, the kind that felt like a father's approval. When the meeting ended, Malik and Harold stepped out onto the terrace overlooking the river. The breeze carried the scent of rain from the night before. Chicago stretched out below them, vibrant, imperfect, alive. Harold rested both hands on his cane. "You know, Malik, when I built this company, I thought legacy was measured in buildings and balance sheets. But lately I have realized it is measured in people, in what they do when no one is keeping score." Malik nodded. "You gave me that chance, sir." Harold smiled. "No, you gave me mine." For a moment they stood in silence, watching sunlight bounce off the water. Then Harold turned toward him. "You will face resistance. Change always offends comfort. But remember what brought you here. Integrity is the one currency that never loses value." "I will remember," Malik said. That evening, as Malik rode the bus home, he looked out over the skyline glowing orange in the sunset. His phone buzzed with a message from Jessica, photos from the day's meeting. In one, he was standing beside Harold, both of them smiling, both unaware of the camera. The caption read, "Day 1, a new chapter begins." Malik smiled faintly. He saved the photo and locked his screen. The city lights reflected in the glass beside him, a reminder of how far he had come. From a storm that nearly ended a life to a movement that might change countless others, everything had started with one small decision to stop and help. And as the bus rumbled through the city streets, Malik whispered to himself, "This is what purpose feels like." The following week arrived with gray skies hanging low over Chicago. The rain had returned, steady and soft, drumming against the tall windows of Morrison and Associates. Inside, Malik Carter sat in his office, the one that still felt too big for him. Papers were spread across his desk, proposals, outreach plans, partnership drafts, but his focus kept slipping to the rhythm of the rain. It reminded him of that day, the one that had changed everything. Jessica knocked lightly on his door and stepped inside. Mr. Morrison asked if you could join him in the conference room. "The board is here." Malik straightened. "The board?" "Yes," she said. "He wants you to present your proposal personally." He nodded, feeling a quiet tension build in his chest. He gathered his notes, adjusted his tie, and followed her down the hall. As they approached the large glass doors of the conference room, voices drifted through, low, sharp, the kind of tones reserved for disagreement. When he entered, the room fell silent. Harold Morrison sat at the head of the long table, hands folded over his cane. Around him, 6 board members turned their attention toward Malik. Most wore polite expressions, though a few looked skeptical. "Mr. Carter," Harold said, his tone calm but firm. "Please, take a seat. The floor is yours." Malik nodded and began. He spoke clearly, outlining the core of the Character Initiative mentorship programs, youth employment partnerships, and scholarships for students from underserved communities. He emphasized responsibility, not charity, dignity, not pity. When he finished, the room remained quiet for a long moment. Then one of the board members, a woman in a red blazer, leaned forward. "It is an admirable plan, Mr. Carter," she said. "But philanthropy of this scale diverts significant funds from our profit centers. Investors might question the return." Another member added, "Frankly, it sounds more like a passion project than a business strategy." Malik took a slow breath, steadying himself. "With respect, this initiative is not about reducing profit. It is about redefining it. A company that invests in people builds loyalty, trust, and long-term value. Numbers rise and fall, but integrity compounds." A few eyebrows lifted. Harold smiled faintly, but said nothing. The man seated at the far end of the table, gray suit pressed sharp as glass, cleared his throat. "And you believe someone with your limited experience can manage this scale of responsibility?" The tone was polite, but the sting was clear. Malik met his gaze evenly. "Experience is measured in years. Character is measured in choices. I may not have the first, but I live by the second." For a heartbeat, the room held its breath. Then Harold's cane tapped against the floor. "That," he said softly, "is precisely why he is sitting at this table." The tension broke. Some of the board members looked away. Others shifted uncomfortably. Harold continued, his voice gathering strength. "Every company reaches a moment where it must decide what kind of legacy it wants to leave. Profit keeps the lights on. Yes, but principle keeps the lights worth turning on. This young man reminded me of that." He turned to Malik. "Mr. Carter, proceed with Phase 1. You have my full authority." Malik nodded, humbled. "Thank you, sir." The meeting ended soon after, the board members dispersing in quiet conversation. When the last of them had left, Harold leaned back in his chair, exhaustion hidden behind his steady smile. Malik stepped closer. "You did not have to defend me like that," he said softly. Harold chuckled. "Defend you? Son, I was defending what I believe in." Malik smiled faintly. "Still, thank you." Harold studied him for a moment. "Do not thank me. Prove me right." Later that evening, as Malik left the building, the rain had eased into a fine mist. The city lights shimmered across the wet pavement, turning every reflection into a ripple of color. He walked without an umbrella, letting the cool drops hit his face. Each step reminded him of that morning in the storm, how he had knelt beside a stranger, unaware that compassion would open a door power never could. Tonight, he understood something deeper. Power can impress people, but only character moves them. And as the clouds drifted apart, revealing a faint silver moon above the skyline, Malik Carter whispered to himself, "Phase 1 begins tomorrow." Morning light broke through the clouds the next day, spilling across the windows of Morrison and Associates. Inside the main lobby, staff moved with purpose. There was a quiet energy in the air, the kind that follows a turning point. For Malik Carter, this was the beginning of something larger than a promotion or a title. It was the day the character initiative officially came to life. He arrived early, dressed in a navy suit that fit a little better than before. The air smelled faintly of polish and coffee. As he walked through the halls, employees nodded to him, some with curiosity, some with respect. Word had spread quickly after the board meeting. The man who had once been late to an interview now led a program that could redefine the company's reputation. Jessica met him outside the conference hall. "Everything is ready," she said. "The press is here, local news, a few community leaders. Mr. Morrison will join you in 10 minutes. Malik nodded, though his hands felt slightly unsteady. "Thank you, Jessica," she smiled. "You are going to do fine. You earned this." Inside the hall, rows of chairs filled the open space. Banners with the words, "The Character Initiative, Building Integrity Through Opportunity" hung from the walls. The sound of quiet conversation floated through the air. Malik stood near the stage, taking a slow breath. He thought about the rain, about his mother's words, about the man who had looked him in the eyes and told him, "You already passed the interview." When Harold Morrison entered, the room hushed. He moved carefully but with presence, his cane tapping softly against the floor. He stopped beside Malik and whispered, "You ready?" "As ready as I can be," Malik said. Harold smiled. "Then let us show them what leadership looks like." The presentation began with Harold at the podium. He spoke about legacy, integrity, and the importance of giving back. Then he turned toward Malik. "This young man reminded me of something I had forgotten," Harold said to the crowd. "That leadership begins with compassion. He did not walk past a stranger in need, and because of that, this company will not walk past communities in need either. Please welcome Mr. Malik Carter." Applause filled the hall. Malik stepped forward, steadying his breath. "Thank you, Mr. Morrison, and thank you all for being here." His voice carried clearly, calm but full of conviction. "This initiative is not about fixing people, it is about empowering them. It is about believing that potential is everywhere, even in the places where no one bothers to look." He paused, scanning the room. "I came from one of those places. I know what it feels like to be overlooked, to be judged before you even speak. But I also know what can happen when someone gives you a chance. This program exists to create those chances for students, for workers, for families who only need one open door to change everything." A ripple of quiet moved through the audience. Reporters lowered their cameras slightly, drawn in by his sincerity. Malik continued, "We will measure success not just in profit margins, but in lives impacted. Because when you invest in people, you invest in the future." When he finished, the applause returned stronger this time, not polite but genuine. Harold rose from his chair and placed a hand on Malik's shoulder. "Well done," he said softly. After the event, reporters gathered around them for quotes, but Harold waved them off gently. "Let the work speak," he said. "That is what matters." Later that afternoon, Malik stood by the large window in his office, looking down at the city below. The rain had stopped. The streets gleamed under a pale Sunday. He thought about every step that had led him here, the bus rides, the worry, the choice to stop for a stranger. He realized something then. Sometimes the most powerful doors are not opened by keys, but by kindness. As he turned off the lights and prepared to leave, his reflection in the glass caught his eye. He smiled quietly. The same man who once knelt in the rain now stood at the head of a movement built on character. And somewhere inside the vast hum of the city, Malik Carter knew this was only the beginning of what compassion could build. Weeks passed, and the character initiative began to take shape. The program spread quickly, first through the company, then across the city. Billboards appeared on buses and train stations. Integrity builds opportunity. Community centers called for partnerships. Schools asked for mentors. What had started as a single idea inside a boardroom was now a movement touching lives far beyond the office wall. Every morning, Malik Carter arrived early, notebook in hand, sleeves rolled up. He met with volunteers, reviewed proposals, and visited neighborhoods that rarely saw executives in suits. He spoke with small business owners, students, and single parents, listening more than he talked. Each story reminded him of why he had begun, because character was not theory. It was action. One afternoon, Malik and Harold Morrison drove together to a youth center on the south side, not far from where Malik had grown up. The building had once been abandoned, its walls covered in graffiti. Now, under the initiative, it was being restored. Fresh paint, new windows, a sign that read, Morrison Community Hub. When they arrived, children were painting murals along the back wall. Music drifted from a small speaker. The director, a woman in her 40s, greeted them warmly. "Mr. Morrison, Mr. Carter, welcome. You have no idea what this means to the kids here." Harold smiled. "Oh, I think we might." Malik knelt beside a young boy painting a sunburst of yellow across the wall. "That looks incredible," he said. "What does it mean to you?" The boy grinned. "It means light, even when it rains." Malik's chest tightened at the words. He looked up at Harold, who was watching quietly with that same faint, knowing smile. Later, as they stood outside, Harold leaned against his cane and said, "Do you see it now, Malik? This is the return that those board members could never calculate. You cannot measure it in stock reports." Malik nodded. "You were right, sir. Legacy lives in people." Harold looked out at the street where children played under a bright mural. "No, son. Legacy lives in choices, and one choice can ripple through generations." A gust of wind lifted a piece of paper from the ground. Malik caught it instinctively, a flyer announcing the hub's grand opening. He folded it and slipped it into his pocket, like a small promise. That evening, back at headquarters, Jessica met him at the door with an envelope. "This came for you," she said. "No sender listed." Malik opened it. Inside was a handwritten note on crisp stationery. The handwriting was steady, elegant. "Mr. Carter, I have spent decades building this company. But watching you has reminded me that leadership does not belong to a title. It belongs to a truth. My health is declining, and I will soon step down officially. When I do, I want the character initiative to remain in your hands. Protect it, nurture it, let it grow beyond us both. Harold Morrison." End of 2. Malik read the letter twice, the words blurring slightly as emotion swelled in his chest. He sank into his chair, holding the note like it was something fragile. For a long moment, the noise of the office faded away. The next day, Harold did not come to work. His assistant said he was resting at home. The staff sent flowers, well wishes, cards signed with gratitude. Malik visited that evening, finding him on the porch wrapped in a blanket, a cup of tea in hand. "You got my letter," Harold said, smiling weakly. "Yes, sir," Malik replied. "And I will do as you asked." "I know you will." Harold's voice was faint but steady. "You have already proven that doing the right thing does not need an audience, it just needs courage." The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the smell of rain. For a moment, they sat in silence. Then Harold added, "When I am gone, promise me one thing." "Anything," Malik said. "Promise you will keep stopping no matter how high you climb. Keep noticing the people everyone else walks past." Malik nodded, eyes bright. I promise. Harold smiled, content. Good, then I can rest easy. As dusk settled, Malik stood to leave. He turned at the door and looked back at the man who had once been a stranger in the rain, now a mentor, almost a father. Thank you, sir, Malik said softly. For what? For seeing me, Malik replied. And Harold Morrison, with a tired but peaceful grin, said, No, son, you saw me first. A few weeks later, the city gathered under a bright spring sky. The newly renovated Morrison Community Hub stood at the corner of 79th and Ashland, its glass doors open, the sound of children's laughter spilling into the street. Banners fluttered above the entrance. Grand opening, building futures through character. Malik Carter stood near the stage, adjusting the microphone while volunteers arranged chairs. The smell of fresh paint mixed with the aroma of food from local vendors. Parents, teachers, and neighbors filled the courtyard. It was not a corporate event, it was a celebration of the community, built by the very people it was meant to serve. Jessica walked up beside him, smiling. He would have loved this, she said quietly. Malik nodded. He helped build it. A framed photo of Harold Morrison rested at the edge of the stage, surrounded by white lilies. He had passed away peacefully just a week earlier. The company had observed a moment of silence that day, but Malik knew that today was the true tribute the legacy Harold wanted most. When the time came to speak, Malik stepped forward. The crowd quieted. The breeze carried his voice clearly across the square. Good morning, everyone, he began. Thank you for being here. This building is not just walls and windows. It is proof that compassion can create change. He paused, glancing at Harold's photo. A few months ago, I met a man in the middle of a storm. I did not know his name or what he owned. I only knew he needed help. That small act, that choice to stop, became the beginning of everything you see here today. People nodded, listening closely. Malik continued, his tone steady but warm. Harold Morrison believed that leadership without empathy is empty. He taught me that integrity is not a policy, it is a practice. And he reminded me that the real measure of success is not in what you build, but in who you lift. Applause rose, soft at first, then stronger. Malik smiled faintly. This hub will provide tutoring, mentorship, job training, and resources for families across this city. But beyond all that, it will stand for something greater dignity, because every person deserves to be seen, valued, and believed in. He looked toward a group of teenagers painting a mural on the far wall, bright colors, raised hands, and words that read, "Character is power." That is what this means, he said, his voice growing stronger. Character is not about where you start. It is about what you choose when no one is watching. That truth changed my life, and it will change many more. The crowd erupted into applause again. Children cheered, music started, and the ribbon was cut. Balloons lifted into the air, drifting above the rooftops. Malik stepped back, watching as families filled the building, exploring classrooms and workshops that just weeks ago had been empty halls. Jessica joined him, her eyes glistening. You did it, she said. No, Malik replied. We did it. Him, you, every person who believed that kindness still matters. As the afternoon sun lowered over Chicago, Malik walked to the edge of the street and looked up at the sky. Clouds drifted slowly across a pale blue canvas. For a moment, he felt the faintest drop of rain brush his hand. He smiled. Somewhere, he thought, Harold was watching, smiling too. Malik whispered softly, I kept the promise. He turned back toward the sound of laughter echoing from the hub. The city that once felt distant now felt like home. And as the sun dipped behind the skyline, Malik Carter knew one simple truth. Storms do not destroy purpose, they reveal it. Because in the end, it was never just about saving a man in the rain. It was about saving what humanity still means. And from that day forward, the name Morrison Community Hub stood for more than a company's legacy. It stood for a new kind of power, quiet, unshakable, and born from character.